Hello, our topic today is double and doubling in psychodrama and in life. And we are here in Button Place at Original Moreno stage at Hudson Valley Psychodrama Institute with Deb Shaddy. Hello, Deb.
Hi, Anna. Sociodrama is a way of exploring issues such as racism, whether or not to build a new Walmart in the town. And when we do sociodramas, people identify different positions around that particular issue. People can also double if what's being expressed in a particular position, another view to add to that position.
I don't feel good, and I think I don't have enough energy to do something or start something new.
I'm really tired, just exhausted. On the one hand, I'm overwhelmed, just exhausted. On the other hand, I've got a desire to do something about it, to really get involved.
I'm here right now in Button Place.
Right.
I'm 50 years old, Paul, with my feet grounded on the floor.
Right.
I'm breathing.
Yeah.
Some other ones are tuning into what's going on in the body language, the client or the protagonist. So you might notice that a protagonist or a client's kind of rubbing their legs a lot. And you can tune into that and replicate that yourself and get a sense of what might be going on. Or the client might be clenching their fists and kind of, hitting the arm of the chair, something like that. So kind of being a somatic double, tuning into the body is another great way to double. Being what we would call a paradoxical double, which would be sort of expressing the opposite of what the client or the protagonist might be expressing, which if the protagonist is in a situation where they're being taken advantage of, for example, you might say, I really like being treated this way. So that offers the opportunity for the protagonist to get into a different feeling. Another way to double is to express the ambivalence that probably we all feel about most things, but for the double to say something like, on the one hand, I'm feeling really angry about this. On the other hand, I'm feeling really scared about this. So you can express more fully all of the feelings that a protagonist might be experiencing. Another kind of double is what we would call a leading double, where the double comes up and says, and what I really want to say to you is, and lets the protagonist fill in that blank, or what I'm afraid to say to you is, and it helps the protagonist kind of fill in and bring up something that's not already been expressed. Another way the double can be helpful is to maybe indicate the feeling in a slightly stronger way than the protagonist has identified. The protagonist might say, I'm feeling a little irritated about that. And the protagonist or the double may come in and say, I'm feeling really angry about that. Right. So it can help the protagonist really find what's the most appropriate level for them in that moment. All right. So Sanaya, do you want to continue with? Okay.
Yes.
Sanaya, could you please tell again the story? What brought you into the session?
Yes. Recently, I don't feel that I don't feel good, and I think I don't have enough energy to do something or start something new. And every morning I was like,
May I double?
Yes, please.
I'm really, really tired. Just exhausted.
yeah, I'm exhausted.
Right. So that's a great example of an impassioned and expressive double, because it helps I get into how big that feeling is for her.
Could you please tell a little bit more about how do you feel?
Yeah, so well, I feel very exhausted, but at the same time, something is pushing me to do something new, and I have to support my family.
May I double? On the one hand, I'm overwhelmed, just exhausted. And on the other hand, I've got a desire to do something about it, to really get involved.
And is there any feeling that Sinai's not expressing?
I'm exhausted, I'm worn out, I'm overwhelmed, I'm energetic, I'm joyful, I'm engaging, I'm creating, empowering.
And if it feels right, please repeat. If it doesn't, correct in your way.
Yeah, I'm so exhausted, but I want to be engaging something.
I'm scared that I'm not going to be able to do this. I'm really, really scared.
Yeah, I'm really scared because then people might judge me. She's not capable. It's like that.
Right, so that's a great example, expressing the ambivalence that a client might be feeling, and also deepening and helping the client to express something that hasn't been expressed so far.
Beautiful.
The therapeutic spiral model uses something called the containing double, and that's where the protagonist has a double that comes up and is with them throughout the whole drama.
Right.
So it's one double throughout the whole drama, and the purpose of that drama is to really help make sure that the protagonist feels safe, is there to express anything that the protagonist is not able to express, and just to provide safety.
And to feel right here, right presented with the feet on the floor.
Right. And to remind the protagonist to breathe and to stay grounded. And sometimes that's done through physical touch, a hand on the back, and some other form of physical support.
Paul, you are in the role of my client right now.
Okay.
What brought you here today?
Well, it's kind of tough to talk about for me, but it's my relationship with my wife, and it's really difficult for me to express feelings. And I keep thinking of all these incidents, and sometimes I just want to, leave my body, just like a blank mind, and just, I'm numb.
What I would like to suggest today for you, and this would be in the group setting, is containing double. And I would play right now the role of containing double. Would it be all right for you? And in the group, I would pick up somebody for that role if I am in this position, right? So, as containing double, I would usually put my hand on the area of heart chakra, like this. Is it all right to touch you?
Yes. Yes. Feel better.
I'm here right now in bottom place.
Right.
I'm 50 years old, Paul, with my feet grounded on the floor.
Right.
I'm breathing.
Yeah.
And I see the walls around. I'm here with Anna and Deb.
Yeah.
I'm presented here. And that's what I would repeat each time when I see that the protagonist leave the body. Each time. Even the action is happening, I would say, breathe, breathe. I'm here right now. In bottom place, I'm 50 years old with grounded feet, and I'm breathing.
Yeah.
I'm present and I'm safe.
I'm present and I'm safe. And I would keep my hand on the heart chakra. Do you
want to give any 3 or 4 words or a sentence or two about how that feels?
Well, I tend to dissociate a lot of times, and when I'm met with what I call stressful situation, I kind of freeze up, and as I'm freezing, I want to escape.
Psyche wants to leave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's really helpful for me to feel the touch and being able to ground and having a reminder of where I am. It helps me kind of retain that I am okay where I am, that I'm present, and I don't have to drift off to numbness to deal with this therapeutic situation.
And I'm breathing right now.
Yeah, I've noticed that I froze my breath, or just kind of. I know it sounds silly, but to stop breathing.
Right. When what happens is we breathe very shallowly,
Right.
so we breathe from up here, which makes us more scared in a sense because our body's not getting enough oxygen. So being reminded to breathe, and especially with the focus on the feet, helps us to stay grounded. So that was a great example.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. This is like technical question about, could you please say just general rules when mostly for psychodramatists who are new in psychodrama, what we should do and what we shouldn't do using the double?
To some extent, it depends on the director a little bit. So the first thing to do is to check with the director and see if the director is all right with people coming in to double. So sometimes the director may call for a double, or they may ask for, is there anybody in the group who can imagine something else the protagonist might be feeling. It's to make sure that you're okay with the double. Oftentimes when people are in the audience or the group and they want to double, they signal the director in some way. Sometimes we use a signal like that, and then the director can say, yes, this is a good time, or no, it's not a good time. So an absolute no would be to not pay attention to the director, but to always follow whether the director is open to having you come in as a protagonist, as a double. A second thing is that we always use I, that when you're an inner voice for the protagonist, so you always use I feel, I need, I want, and you're always coming from a feeling statement. So those are probably the 2 most important things. A couple of other things are to be willing to be told, no, that's not it. Sometimes we're either wrong in what we're doubling, we're not quite hitting the mark, or we might be right, but the protagonist is not quite ready to hear that or to accept that. So the only probably really wrong thing that we can do is to not let go of our hunch, to be kind of insistent that we're right. So that wouldn't be helpful to the protagonist.
Right.
The beautiful thing about doubling is that even when we're wrong, it's helpful to the protagonist. So if you were to say to the protagonist, I'm feeling really angry right now, the protagonist might say, well, I'm not feeling angry, but I am really frustrated. So it helps the protagonist to clarify, even if what you've produced as a double isn't seem to quite hit the mark. The other thing that maybe can be a little bit of a problem is if we increase the intensity of the feeling too much too quickly. So if the protagonist is saying, I'm feeling a little scared, and the double goes, I'm feeling terrified, that might be too much. And so it's helpful to help the protagonist maybe move up to the appropriate level of intensity, but when we go too big too fast, it's often not helpful. You can only double the protagonist. You can double the protagonist in any role, whether they're in their own role or the auxiliary role, but not in, you can't double any other auxiliary.
Could you please say then the instruction which you give to protagonist which sees that and experiences this for first time? How would you say to protagonist when person is doubling, how do they agree or not agree? Just new people who hear this for
well,
first time.
As a director,
Yes.
I think that's how you're
Yes.
asking the question.
Yes.
As a director, you can often tell by the protagonist's facial expression, that's not quite right.
Yes.
That's not.
Yes.
That's not a hit. You can also ask the protagonist, does that seem right? Because if it is right, usually you will see the protagonist become more animated and take it on. But I think if you've got a protagonist that maybe might have a hard time saying if something's not right, you would want to check it out with the protagonist by saying, is that what you're feeling? If it's not right, correct it and make it what's true for you. So you have to know your protagonist a little bit to know whether or not they would be able to let you know.
Right.
If something wasn't quite right as a double.
And just maybe briefly, Deb, if you could say about using doubling in sociodrama.
Sure. Well, sociodrama, as you know, is a way of exploring issues such as racism, whether or not to build a new Walmart in the town.
Right, social
issues as opposed to a personal story. And when we do sociodramas, people identify different positions around that particular issue. And so people make up a character, so to speak. People can also double if what's being expressed in a particular position isn't accurate, but if there's another view to add to that position. Does that make sense?
Yes.
If someone were a farmer, for example, and the issue was around maybe using the land for fracking, the person playing the farmer might express something about how his land is being used, and someone might come up and double something about it's easier for me to make a living this way than it is by farming. So we can add to what's being expressed in a particular role through doubling.
The group members can experience that by just verbalizing that.
Right. Now, because you're taking on a role, the person playing that role doesn't necessarily have the same, yes, this is right, or no, it's not right. You're really just expanding the role by doubling in that situation. Now, another way to do it in sociodrama is for someone else to come up and take on that role rather than double the person in the role. Because the person in that role, it's not really their story, so they don't own it in the same way that they do in a psychodrama. So you could either do it through doubling, or you could do it by the group member actually taking on that role.
Could you please tell about using doubling in the role training?
So what I'm understanding by what you mean by role training is someone is taking on a role and needs to practice some different ways of taking on that role. So, for example, someone might want to practice how to ask for a raise from their boss. So in that way, the protagonist becomes the boss, and then different group members come up and offer some options for how to interact with the boss around asking for a raise. So doubling can come from, in that case, the doubling would come when the protagonist is in the role of the boss. Because you can only double the protagonist in whatever role they're in. You can only double the protagonist. You can double the protagonist in any role, whether they're in their own role or the auxiliary role, but not in, you can't double any other auxiliary.
Could you please tell a little bit about yourself, about your personal psychodrama experience, about your work?
Sure. Well, I live in the Midwest, and I discovered psychodrama when I was in graduate school. I actually discovered it when I was looking for a method of role training, actually for some college students that were in a leadership role. And then I found a psychodrama training group in Omaha, where I was living at the time. And the first time I saw John Nolte, who was my original trainer, direct, I just fell in love with it. And for me personally, psychodrama has been the only method, and certainly the best method, at helping me stop living in my head altogether and to become more fully present in my body. And I'm very grateful to psychodrama for that. And I currently have a private practice near Kansas City, and I teach here at Hudson Valley Psychodrama Institute. And I've used psychodrama in academic, business, and clinical settings. And I love psychodrama because there's nothing it can't be used for. It can be used for corporate trainings. It can be used for, I've used it to train resident advisors in a college setting. It's just so versatile.
Beautiful, thank you. And it's important for me to add here that Deborah is my trainer here in Hudson Valley Psychodrama Institute. I'm taking core training, and Deb is my teacher. Thank you, Deb, so much for this wonderful interview. I will give all Deb's contact information below the video. And thank you for watching, and namaste.
Namaste to you.
Thank you.